Think about the last time money arrived in your account without you doing anything that day. You didn't earn it that morning. You didn't negotiate it. You didn't perform for it. It just came. Because of an agreement made months ago, in a room you barely remember, with a handshake that felt like it meant something permanent. Now ask yourself something you probably haven't asked out loud yet. What happens to you? Not your budget, not your lifestyle, but you, the day that stops. Marcus has been an accountant for 9 years. Not a flashy job, not the kind of job people ask about at dinner parties, but a solid one, the kind that comes with a company laptop and a parking space with your name on a small plastic sign, and a manager who says, "We really value your contributions at the annual review," and mostly means it. He was good at it. Actually, good. The kind of good that comes from caring about the work when no one is watching. Last March, his company implemented a new financial automation suite, the kind that doesn't replace you in a memo. It just makes you gradually less necessary, task by task, quarter by quarter, until one Tuesday, the project assignments stop coming, and your calendar is full of meetings that exist only to justify the fact that you're still there. He still has the job. That's the part no one tells you about. It's not that the job disappears, it's that it empties out from the inside. He checks his phone under the table during those meetings now. He's been doing it for 6 months, not because he's distracted, because he's trying to figure out what he's worth in a market that is very quietly reorganizing itself around the premise that what he does, the careful, skilled, accumulated competence of 9 years, can now be done in 11 seconds by software that costs less per month than his gym membership. His wife doesn't know how bad it is yet. He's been meaning to tell her. He opens the conversation in his head at 2 a.m., runs it through to the end, and closes it again without saying anything. Not because he's hiding it, because saying it out loud makes it the kind of real that requires a plan, and the plan doesn't exist yet. He pours the cold coffee into the sink. He makes a new cup. He drinks it standing up by the counter. Sitting down feels like admitting something. Here's what you believe about money, not what you'd say if someone asked you. What you actually believe, in the part of yourself that makes financial decisions at 11 p.m. when you're tired and scared. You believe that if you show up and do good work, you will be compensated, that the exchange is fundamentally fair, that the system, imperfect as it is, rewards competence over time, that your value in the marketplace is connected in some meaningful way to who you are and what you can do. You believe the salary is a reflection of you. That's the belief we need to talk about, because the salary was never a reflection of you. It was a reflection of how difficult you were to replace. For most of the 20th century, that distinction didn't matter. Replacement was slow, expensive, and logistically complicated. Your skills took years to develop. Training your replacement took months. The friction protected you, not because the system was fair, but because inefficiency worked in your favor. That friction is gone. And here is where the story stops being about Marcus, because what's happening to him is not a glitch in one man's career. The numbers have been keeping score for years. Goldman Sachs estimates 300 million jobs automatable this decade. McKinsey puts between 42 and 68% of all work tasks at risk, depending on the sector. Marcus's 9 years of careful, skilled, accumulated competence are in that range, and so probably are yours. What this means is a fork in the road, the same Marcus, the same Tuesday, 3 entirely different versions of what his life looks like in 2040. And the difference between them is not luck, it's structure. Let's follow him. Marcus, in path 1, still has an income, Let's be precise about that, because the story of inertia is not about destitution. It's about something quieter and harder to name. He left the accounting firm in 2027, not fired, made redundant, which is a different word for the same thing. The severance was 4 months. He used 3 of them, looking for a job exactly like the one he'd lost, because that's what you do when you don't yet understand that the job category itself is contracting. He found work, a series of it, platform-based bookkeeping, tax preparation during season, compliance audits for companies that need a human signature on documents their software already produced. The work exists. It pays. But it pays by the task, not by the month. There is no January 1st, where someone agrees he is worth $74,000 a year. There is a home office that used to be a guest room, a task board that refreshes every morning, and a rate posted publicly on 3 platforms that he adjusts downward every 6 months because the market keeps moving in that direction. His wife works too. They are fine. That is the word they use. Fine. Solvent, but tired. Managing, but not building. Here, but not arriving anywhere. He does not know, on any given Monday morning, exactly how much money will come in that week. He has not known for 4 years. He thought it would get easier. It didn't. You don't adapt to income uncertainty the way you adapt to a new commute. The body keeps score. The low-grade vigilance, the checking, the calculating, the mental math running in the background of every dinner out and every car repair doesn't stop. It just becomes the baseline. In Path 1, this is the new normal for 34% of American workers by 2035. Not poverty. Something more insidious. The permanent removal of the ground beneath your feet. Marcus, in Path 2, received a letter in 2026. Not an email. A letter from a newly created federal office, the Labor Transition Authority, explaining that his occupation had been designated a Category 3 displacement risk, and that he was eligible for a transition support package. 18 months of income bridge payments at 70% of his last salary, conditional on enrollment in an approved retraining pathway. He almost threw it away. He almost threw it away because it felt like being told you have a disease. Because accepting the letter meant accepting the premise of the letter, which was that the career he'd built, the 9 years, the competence, the parking space, was officially over. He sat with it for 2 weeks. His wife read it. She said, "It's not about what it means. It's about what it buys us." She was right. He enrolled in a financial technology compliance program, a field that had expanded precisely because automation needed human oversight at the regulatory layer. Not the same work, adjacent work, work that valued what he knew while adding what the machines couldn't do. Judgment under ambiguity, accountability, the ability to look a regulator in the eye and explain why a decision was made. The 18 months were uncomfortable. The payment was 70%, not 100%, and 70% requires adjustments. They canceled the vacation. They cooked more. They had conversations about money that felt like surgery, necessary, painful, clarifying. There was a night in month 9 when he sat at the kitchen table at midnight and could not remember clearly why he had started. The new subject matter felt foreign. The other students in his cohort were younger. He closed his laptop and looked at his hands for a long time. His wife found him there. She didn't say anything. She made 2 cups of tea and sat down across from him. That was the night he decided to finish. By month 14, he had a contract. By month 18, a full-time offer. He eats dinner with his wife on Thursday nights at a place they like. They talk about things that are not money. This is not a small thing. In Path 2, proactive transition programs cost 40% less than emergency social services after the crisis hits. The countries that ran the numbers made the investment. The ones that waited paid more for less. Marcus, in Path 3, is in a parking lot outside a Walgreens at 8:30 in the morning. He's not buying anything. He's using the Wi-Fi. His home internet was disconnected 6 weeks ago, not because he couldn't pay the bill. He could, that week. But because the week before he couldn't, and at some point the provider makes a decision that the account is too unstable to maintain. He opens 3 apps, checks the rates, decides where to work today. He is not lazy. That needs to be said clearly, because the story of Path 3 is frequently told as a story about people who made poor choices. Marcus made the same choices as the Marcus in Path 2. He enrolled in a retraining program. His program was defunded after a state budget shortfall in 2027, 8 months before he would have completed it. He had 2 chances, and both of them closed. Now he eats based on what he earns today. Not this month, not this week. Today, he has become very precise about food. He knows the price per unit of everything he buys. He has a system, not because he's frugal by nature, but because precision is the only form of control available to him. His daughter is 9. She asked him last week why they don't go to the restaurant they used to go to. He told her it was closed. It isn't closed. In Path 3, GDP still grows. That is the number that makes headlines. The number that doesn't make headlines is the Gini coefficient, which reaches levels not seen in the US since the Gilded Age. The economy is producing wealth. The distribution of that wealth has become, quietly and without a single dramatic event, something that no longer includes Marcus. It's 2040. Marcus 1 is 50. He works. He has always worked. The platform economy matured around him, the way a river finds its banks, settling into a shape that is permanent looking, but was never inevitable. He is algorithm fluent now, the way his father was union fluent. He knows the rules. He works the system. He survives it. He has not taken a vacation in 6 years, not because he can't afford one, because taking 2 weeks off means 2 weeks of lost platform position, and position is not something you recover quickly. He is not unhappy. He is permanently, low-gradely vigilant, and he has lived inside that vigilance for so long that it no longer feels like vigilance. It just feels like Tuesday. Marcus 2 is 50. He runs a 3-person firm doing financial compliance consulting for companies navigating AI-integrated accounting systems. The work exists because automation created it. Companies needed humans who could interpret what the machines were doing in language that regulators would accept. He did not predict this. He did not plan for it. He followed the pathway, found the adjacent field, built the relationships, and arrived somewhere he couldn't have named in 2026. His daughter is applying to colleges. He has saved enough to help. He takes his wife to the restaurant they like on Thursday nights. They have been doing this for 11 years. It is, in the fullest sense of the word, enough. Marcus 3 is 50. Solvent, but not building. The crisis he feared, the dramatic, single-event collapse, never came. What came instead was slower, and in some ways harder, because there was nothing to point to. No moment when everything broke. Just a long series of moments when things didn't quite come together. He has his health. His daughter is 17 and sharp, and going to be okay. He believes this, the way you believe things you need to be true. His marriage survived the basement years. He checks the gig apps every morning. He will check them tomorrow, and the morning after that. The economy grew 34% between 2024 and 2040. He heard it on the radio. He thought about it for a moment. Then he opened the app. The salary is not ending tomorrow, but the conditions that made it the default, the friction that made you difficult to replace, Those are already gone. The transition is not coming. It is in progress. The only question is whether you're moving with it or waiting for it to finish. 3 things. This week, not eventually. 1. Find out your automation exposure. The OECD Skills Outlook and the Oxford Martin Future of Employment tool let you search your job title and see which tasks are at risk. You cannot navigate a transition you haven't mapped. 2. Identify the layer of your work that requires judgment, not process. The process layer is what software absorbs first. The judgment layer, decisions that need context, accountability, and ambiguity, is what remains. Find that layer. Build your reputation there. 3. Build one income relationship that doesn't go through a platform. One client, one collaborator, one project where your name is attached to the outcome and someone knows your work because they know you. This is the infrastructure that protects you when the platform changes its terms, its rates, or its existence. Marcus II didn't survive because he was smarter than Marcus I. He survived because the structures around him caught him when he fell. You may or may not have those structures, but you can build some of them yourself. Not all of them, not overnight, but enough, if you start now, to make the difference between a soft landing and a hard one. This is a narrative visualization based on documented trends. Goldman Sachs, Economics Research, McKinsey Global Institute, the Oxford Martin School, and OECD employment data. The scenarios are tools for thinking, not maps of what must happen. What happens in part depends on what you do next. Next episode, why your degree is obsolete and what to learn now. The skills that got you hired are not the skills that will keep you employed. We'll look at what's actually being valued in the new economy, what to learn, and how to learn it fast enough to matter. If this made you think, share it with one person who needs to hear it. And if you want to follow where this goes, subscribe. Every episode is a different fork. Every fork is a choice you can still make.